Good morning, students. Welcome back to the English literature class once again. Hope you are all okay. Have regained lot much of energy to fight with the virus. So let us start with the previous assignments that I have given. Now, students, remember that you will make only one single line copy for your class, for your literature class, and in that copy only you are going to write everything that I will give. Okay. Now, yes, last day I have given you some word meanings, some meanings to write. 6 meanings I have given now. So 6 meanings you are going to write in that copy itself, where you are going to write some more word meanings that I will give today. Right. After that, I will give some question answers, that is the question answers of your exercise that you are going to write in the same copy. Fine. Now, before I start, I just want to discuss about the previous works that I have given. I have given some word meanings. The first one is chameleon. A chameleon is a type of lizard which can change color to match its surroundings. The second one is a reptile. A reptile is a cold-blooded animal whose body is usually covered in scales. The third one is gestures. Gesture is nothing but the movement of head or limbs, that means hands, to express an idea or feeling. Next one is the suspicion, the feeling that something or someone cannot be trusted, that means having doubt. Next one is convinced, was very sure of something. Swiftly means quickly. So here we complete our previous works. Now let us continue with yesterday's story, that is a chameleon named Henry. From the previous part we have learnt that Henry was a chameleon who was staying with grandfather along with Raskin Bond as a child. Now let us come to the part. Although Henry did not cause any trouble in our house, he did create an uproar in the nursery school down the road. So, although Henry did not created any trouble, any disturbances in our house, he did create an uproar in the nursery school down the road. He had created a chaos, a confusion in the nursery school down the road. It all began quite innocently. So the matter started quite innocently. What was the matter? Let's see. When the papayas in our garden were ripe, grandmother sent a basketful to her friend Mrs. Ghosh, who was the principal of the nursery school. So when the papayas in our garden, in whose garden? In Raskin Bond's garden, were ripe, grandmother sent a basketful to her friend, and who was this friend? Mrs. Ghosh, who was the principal of that nursery school. While the basket of papayas was lying on the table, Henry managed to slip in when no one was looking. So, when the basket full of papayas was lying on the table, Henry managed to slip inside the basket when no one was looking at him. The gardener dutifully carried the basket to the school and left it in Mrs. Ghosh's office. So the gardener very carefully carried the basket to the school and left it to Mrs. Ghosh's office, that means the principal ma'am's office. When Mrs. Ghosh returned to her office, she began to admire and examine the papayas. When the principal ma'am has returned to her office, she began to praise and test the papayas. Out popped Henry. Jumped out Henry from the basket. Mrs. Ghosh screamed. Henry looked up at her, both eyes revolving furiously. Mrs. Ghosh screamed, shouted loudly. Henry looked up at her, both eyes revolving, moving around furiously, quickly. Mrs. Ghosh screamed again. Henry's color changed from green to yellow to red. So as you all know that a chameleon can change its color so frequently. So over here Henry was changing its color from green to yellow to red. His mouth opened as though he too would like to scream. His mouth means Henry's mouth opened as if he also wants to scream like Mrs. Ghosh. An assistant teacher rushed in, took one look at the chameleon and joined in the shrieking. An assistant teacher rushed inside the room, had one look at the chameleon and joined in the shouting loudly. Henry was terrified. Henry was frightened. He fled from the office, running down the corridor and into one of the classrooms. He saw what Henry has done. Henry ran from the office, running down the corridor and went inside one of the classrooms. There he climbed onto a desk while children ran in all directions, some to get away from the Henry, some to catch him. There he climbed onto a desk while some of the children trying to catch him or run away from him. Finally, Henry went out of a window and disappeared into the garden. Finally, Henry went out of the window and vanished into the garden. Grandmother heard all about the incident from Mrs. Ghosh but did not tell her that the chameleon was ours. So, grandmother heard all the incident from Mrs. Ghosh but did not inform her that the chameleon was theirs. Grandfather and I did not think we would ever see Henry again because the school was 3 houses away. So grandfather and I means Ruskin Bond did not ever think that we can ever see Henry again because the school was 3 houses away from their house. But 3 days later I found him on the garden wall. But 3 days later Ruskin Bond found him on the garden wall once again. After that, Henry spent the rest of his days in the garden and did not go on any more adventures. After that, Henry spent the rest of his days in the garden of Ruskin Bonds and did not went for any more adventures. So here we complete. This is the story from Grandfather's Private Zoo by Ruskin Bond. Hope you like it. Thank you. Now let us discuss few questions from inside the chapter to check what we have learned. Now students, tell me, who is Henry? Yes, Henry is the chameleon. Now can you tell me who has saved Henry? Yes, it is the grandfather who has saved Henry. How does grandfather came to see Henry? While the grandfather was visiting his friend's house, he came upon a noisy scene at the garden gate. People were shouting, throwing stones and waving sticks. The cause of this disturbance was a chameleon that had been sitting calmly on a shrub, right? Now, what does people said about Henry? People claimed that the chameleon could poison them 20 feet away simply by spitting at them. How Henry used to behave with the author? Henry trusted nobody and treated the author's friendly gestures with doubt. If the author used to tickle him in his ribs, Henry used to get very angry upon him. Now tell me, what does Henry used to do when the author put his finger inside Henry's mouth? If the author put his finger inside his mouth, he would simply wait for him to take it out again. He do not bite him at all. Now tell me, how Henry used to take food from the author? If the author sits patiently, Henry would take food from the author's hands. This he did very swiftly, very fast. His tongue was a sort of boomerang which came back to him with the food and insect victim attached to it. So, before the author knew about it, the food gets inside the Henry's mouth. Now, what is Henry's remarkable possession? Henry's eyes were his remarkable possession. Why is it so? Henry's each eyeball bulging out of his head wobbled up and down, backward and forward. These movements made him appear very scary, very frightening. He could move one eye without disturbing the other. Now tell me how Henry used to behave in the author's house. Henry did not cause any trouble in the author's house, but he has created an uproar in the nursery school down the road. Now tell me who has sent a basket full of papayas to whom? It is the grandmother who has sent a basket full of papayas to Mrs. Ghosh. Now, who is this Mrs. Ghosh? Mrs. Ghosh is the principal of the nursery school. Now tell me what Henry has done with the basket. While the basket of papayas was lying on the table, Henry managed to slip inside when no one was looking at him. Now tell me what the gardener has done. The gardener dutifully carried the basket to the school and left it in Mrs. Ghosh's office. Now, students, tell me what Mrs. Ghosh has done while returning to her office. When Mrs. Ghosh has returned to her office, she began to admire and examine the papayas. Now tell me how both Mrs. Ghosh and Henry has reacted at each other. Mrs. Ghosh screamed at Henry, while Henry has looked up at her, both eyes revolving furiously. Mrs. Ghosh screamed again. Henry's color changed from green to yellow to red. Right. Now tell me, how does the assistant teacher react? An assistant teacher who has rushed inside the room took one look at the chameleon and joined in the screaming with Mrs. Ghosh. Now tell me what Henry has done to disappear from the school. Henry was terrified. He gets so confused that he fled from the office, running down the corridor and into one of the classrooms. There he climbed onto a desk while children ran in all directions, some to get away from Henry, some to catch him. Finally, Henry went out of a window and disappeared into the garden. Right. Now tell me, does grandmother told the truth about Henry to Mrs. Ghosh? Grandmother heard all about the incident from Mrs. Ghosh but did not tell her that the chameleon was theirs. Right. Now tell me, how many days after Henry has returned? 3 days after Henry has returned. And where he has returned? He has returned to the author's garden, right? Now tell me how Henry has spent his rest of the life. Henry has spent the rest of his days in the garden of the author and did not go on for any more adventures. Right. Now, can you tell me who is this author of the story? It is Ruskin Bond who is the author of the story. Now, can you tell me from which main story this story is a part of? The story is Grandfather's Private Zoo, from which this story is a part of, right? Now, these are the few questions that I have discussed with you. Hope you have understood. Now, I will be giving some. Now, students, listen to me very carefully. Last day, I have given some word meanings to write. I have given 6 word meanings, right? After that, you will continue some more word meanings that I am giving today in the same chronological order. So, your 7th word is boomerang. It is a carved wooden stick which makes a circle when thrown and returns to the thrower. The next one is bulging. Bulging is a sticking out from something, means Henry's eyes, the chameleon's eyes, was sticking out from his head. The next one is wobbled. Wobbled means moved unsteadily from side to side, something which moves unsteadily from side to side. The next one is uproar. It is a state of confusion where people shout or are upset about something. Now the next one is sleepin', to go somewhere quickly and quietly, especially without being noticed. The next one is revolving, to move around in circles. The next word is furiously. Here it means quickly with lots of energy. And the last word meaning is shrieking, loud, shouting and screaming. Okay, so these word meanings you are going to continue with the previous word meanings. After that, you will write some new words, the extra meanings that I have given. And then you will write the question answers, the exercise question answers that I have given to you people. Okay. Now the students, to inform you, I have given you some homeworks to do. You will do your homeworks by your own, and in the next tutorial class I will discuss with those homeworks first, then I will discuss the next chapter. Now there are some important notices that I want to inform my students. The first one is, while the students are receiving your tutorial videos, you can sit with a copy, that can be a rough copy, and a pen to write down the running notes or the question answers that I will provide you. I will discuss with you. You can write all those things. You can learn those things afterwards for your betterment. The second point is, there is no such syllabus breakup made yet. You will get your syllabus breakup as soon as the school will reopen. But before that, you just follow the online classes so that you can understand the syllabus. The third point is, there is no such online class timings. It is to the parents who decide the timings for your children when they are going to learn from the online classes in a particular day. The fourth point is, the school cannot provide the books from them in this pandemic situation. Hope you understand the importance, the significance of the situation. But for this, the teachers, we are providing the e-content of the pages for your children to learn. Hope you understand. Thank you.